Okay. So I guess I want to start with tell me where you are now.
I am in Copenhagen, not far away from downtown, with my mom and three cats.
Okay. And tell me what your life was like in Ukraine a month and a half, 2 months ago.
So I came back home by choice after getting my MBA in finance from Lehigh. I came back to my mom's apartment, basically in Mariupol. Had it remodeled, all the fancy stuff put in. Adopted two more cats, one stray and one because he was 18 and no one wanted him. Found an awesome job in the Startup Development Center called 1991. So the startup I work for basically builds online stores on the platform called Shopify. So you can call me anything from like business developer to IT specialist. There've been different versions. So they really needed me because they needed my background for like pitch decks and reaching out to investors and everything I did at Lehigh. So they were happy to have me. I was happy to have them. And Mariupol was just blooming right in front of my eyes. It was nothing like what I had left in 2014 when I came to Lehigh. Beautiful squares, beautiful beach, the newly refurbished dock on the beach, and then a blooming IT community, a lot of people who moved from Donetsk when it was occupied, and to Mariupol. So the population growth was, I think, from 300,000 to 550,000. So this was the go-to place for everyone who wanted to be in peaceful Ukraine, basically. So my life looked like a lot of work in IT, wonderful people to be around, and then volunteering for the animals, trying to find homes for stray animals, just regular domestic chores, going out with friends every once in a while, having movie nights, anything you would think of a European my age doing, dating, wine, sushi, lots of street food. There was a lot of new joints opening up. A lot of my friends were owners. One of my best friends opened like an art space, which was one of very few in the city. So she was always booked. I had another friend open a coffee shop. It was just a blossoming city. I don't know how else to describe it. It was changing right in front of my eyes for the better, really quickly.
Did it change just as quickly the other direction? Was it a day? Was it over a longer span of time that it changed drastically?
Well, it changed immediately because, first of all, you sense the atmosphere. So a lot of people just packed up and left the morning of the 24th. So whoever had a vehicle, whoever had a mindset of we need to get out, which was my friend who escaped Donetsk in 2014, whom I just helped connect to a Brazilian news crew the night before. He called me the morning of and he said, look, this is not going to be good. I've seen this in 2014. Just get out if you can. I know I'm packing up my family right now and we're just driving away. We don't know where we're going. We're going to Western Ukraine. We're just getting out of here because this is not going to end well. So first of all, you feel that half of your circle is gone like that. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what happens next is there's a lot of tension in the air and people are divided into groups. One group of people laughs it off. So there's nothing to worry about. Nothing has changed. So they bombed this military place and they bombed this warehouse and they bombed this geolocation station, but it's military objects. Maybe it will be over soon. And then the second thing, is when they started targeting objects that would directly affect quality of life for civilians. So first they cut electricity, just bombed the power lines and bombed the energy distribution center. So that means no light. which means you immediately realize how dependent you were on it, because your oven is not working anymore, you can't grind your coffee, and then your laptop is, you know, low on battery, and then it like unfolds, you know. So suddenly you think of, do I have enough batteries? How much fuel do I have in my car to charge? And then do I have candles? Do I have candles for my birthday? Do I have candles from church? Any type of just something. And then you realize how quickly it gets dark in February. So by like 4 p.m., total darkness. So the second thing you feel is you walk out onto the street and everything is pitch black. And it was a huge industrial city, you know, with this like high rises and offices and all the streets lit up, and just seeing your city in pitch darkness it's insane. It feels like it just died right in front of your eyes. So yes, that's the first change I kind of felt, you know. And then what else changed? So the people you are used to seeing all, you know, cleaned up and, you know, young hippie crowd, and all your neighbors you're used to seeing just, you know, properly dressed and on their way to work, they slowly but surely slide into like babushka style head coverings and dirty greasy jackets, because what happened next was they cut the gas supply. So suddenly you realize you have to search for wood and cook outside, which in February with winds and snow takes forever. It takes a lot of wood. It's very, very uncomfortable. It's very humiliating, because it's not like you decided to go camping. You know, you were forced to live like this every single day. So you go from like a normal European person to just someone who looks like a hobo, basically, very quickly. And then
Did
you
your
can
mother
never
seek shelter immediately, or did you stay in your apartment?
So my mom had zero plan, neither did my dad, but I had some plans. I talked to my friend, basically, who had 2 cars, and I told him, oh, and his kind of like a cottage with multiple apartments on the different side of town had a proper basement. And by proper, I mean it was dry, unlike our basement, and you could stand up in it. That's it. That's proper basement. So I made a plan with him. Should something like this begin, I go to his place. My mom and I come to his place to stay in his basement. And then if things get really bad, then we drive. I will be the second driver. The problem is his definition of really bad really differed from mine. So I wanted to leave like the same day, because I thought Russians bombing and like at the airport and then moving on to civilian residential areas was bad enough. But to him, it was like, unless my apartment is no more, I'm staying put. So that's why we ended up kind of like trapped against our own will for 4 weeks, from February 24th to March 23rd. And of course, in between, there were 2 to 3 weeks where you just could not physically leave the city because of active fighting all around it or in it. But we could have left much earlier if I wasn't dependent on someone who just had a different definition of bad.
Mm-hmm. So what was your life like in the basement?
So to go back to your question of sheltering, the morning the war began, which was the 24th of February, Thursday, I woke up from like a blast, and it feels like I'm in a war movie, kind of Dunkirk style, and I'm sitting too close to a speaker and it's like vibrating through me. That's how it felt. But I woke up and I was like, that's a really weird way to wake up. And I went on Facebook and I saw what was happening. So I woke up my mom. I told her to call school, because she's an elementary school teacher, to tell them she was not coming, and then to start packing. So we left by 8:20 and went to my friend's place, experienced the second bomb very close to us. That was the geolocation station. Stuffed our 3 cats in beach bags, because we didn't have carriers. Mariupol was right on the beach, so we had beach bags in the house. And we moved to his place on the 24th and never came back. So in essence, it felt like I was still stuck in Mariupol, but already left my home, like for a month. Sorry, what was the question? There was a second question.
I'm sorry. What was life like in the basement for those 4 weeks?
So at first it felt weird because only my mom and I would stay downstairs. There was one more family with a 3-year-old who was staying downstairs. Everyone else would just, show up, spend some time, maybe cook outside, but then inevitably go back to their kitchens, to their bathrooms, to their bedrooms, even when they cut electricity, and then they cut the heat, obviously. So it was like 36 degrees Fahrenheit in the apartment. Sometimes it was warmer outside than it was in the apartment. But what was happening in the beginning was we had Wi-Fi, mobile connection, mobile internet. We had light in the basement, and it felt like a weird, like slumber party style with a bit of tension. But then gradually, when they cut off kind of civilization one step after the other, that's when reality set in. And then more and more people would stay downstairs. No one thought it would get this bad. The fighting kept encroaching on us. And then we found ourselves in between the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, moving from one direction, and the Azov battalion, who are just defending the city, on the other side. And the fighting was happening essentially above our heads, and we were stuck in between. So March 7th, 8th, and 9th was like the most intense fighting I've ever experienced. It feels like being shelled constantly, and they're shelling right into your head. So the walls are moving, and it feels like an earthquake, I assume, because I've never experienced an earthquake. And you just sit there. I arrived at the feeling of apathy really quickly, because there was not much for me to do. There were no more choices. So you just sit and wonder if this one is going to get you or not. But if you're asking about like daily life, okay, so after the second night of bad fighting, so maybe 5 days into the war, we woke up to guys making a lot of noises in the basement around 6 a.m. What was happening is they were dragging out like old doors that they could find, and they ended up using, how do you call a hole in the ground that is used to get to the pipes underground that need to be fixed? Pothole, I don't know. So they took off the cover, the metal cover, and used it as a base for a fire pit.
Oh, like a manhole cover.
Manhole, yes. So they took the cover off and used it, because it's metal and it retains a lot of heat. They used it as a base for the fire pit, right next to the future toilet. And then they threw what is used in a warehouse it's like a wooden pallet,
Yep.
They threw a pallet on, and then created kind of 3 sides of used doors, and the 4th one was left open, and it was pointing towards a fence, so you had some kind of privacy. And that was the toilet. That was an outhouse. So we woke up to like a ready-to-use outhouse and a ready-to-use fire pit. They used bricks all around to retain heat, and they used the top of the manhole as the base. And they found some like metal grid of fridge or something and put it on top, and that was the fire we used to cook food for the next month. And I'm sure it's still being used right now if those people are still alive. And then what else? So because you don't have any water, no water, you don't take showers. Best you can hope for is brushing your teeth, and that's it. Maybe wash your face once a day, which really doesn't make much sense because you end up cooking and then you're gray-faced all over.
Was it dangerous to go outside to cook with the constant shelling?
It wasn't constant. It came and went. You really had to watch for the situation. But then the problem is that it doesn't come gradually. Like it can be complete silence, and then like it's right over your head, and you keep thinking, it went right over my head, what if it went into me? So I remember just the inability of not being able to complete a task, and the inability of being able to plan your day. That's like gets to your psyche. It makes you really irritable, that like you're really mad at the Russians for not being able to proceed with the plan you made out for your day. So I remember like stubbornly cutting the onions, you know, like during the shelling, just because I wanted to complete a task, or like stubbornly sweeping the asphalt area in front of the entrance to the basement because it was full of sharp pieces of shelling. So the kids could use chalk to draw, and so the tires would not get cut for those who still had cars. And I just remember thinking, you know, this is really dangerous and I should not be doing this, but I really, really want to finish this one chunk that I set out to sweep. So I did. So it's like irrational behavior like that happens. You go to bed really early. So I'm a night owl, but I went to bed like 8, 9, usually 8 p.m. just because when you don't have the internet, you don't have electricity, you're trying to not use up any batteries or any candles so you can last longer. Then there's not much to do, you know, and you're so exhausted from just the lifestyle, you're just trying to survive, that you crash by 8 and then you're up by 6, and it feels completely normal.
Doesn't sound like you had any means of communicating. Did you know what was happening in other parts of the Ukraine, or just there was no way to find that out?
So if you're going to write, don't say the, please, just say Ukraine, because the was used in the Soviet Union to indicate it was part of something bigger.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's just Ukraine.
Okay.
But in the beginning, we had all the communication we wanted, because I remember even thinking, oh, I can actually work remote from this basement. That's a weird type of work. But then when they cut the Russians were targeting specifically stations that hold up antennas for the cell phone service. And before they moved on to actually destroying the city, they were targeting, it's one of the demoralization tactics is to cut you off away from the world, you know. So we were under the impression that, so we couldn't listen to any Ukrainian radio anymore, or any radio for that matter. We could only listen to either Russian or Donetsk People's Republic radio. So what we would do is listen to what they were saying and then believe the opposite. Because that's how you do, that's what you do with Russian media to find out the truth. So zero communication with the outside world for about 2 weeks. So second and third week of war. So I thought that no one knew what was happening, because I knew that they were deliberately targeting foreign journalists. I knew they were hunting them down. They had lists, and not just foreign. I mean, I don't know if you've read of the Associated Press journalists. So I helped a few journalists, including the last one, to escape Mariupol. And he escaped like on day 4, and I was completely positive that he was dead, just 100%. So I knew that there was just no means of getting any information out. So I thought that no one knew what was happening and no one heard about Mariupol. I forgot about like satellites possibly seeing what was happening, and I just we just felt so forgotten. We felt like at this point, before, I did not understand why I was there. I just thought it was unnecessary suffering, and I couldn't find my mission in this experience. But then I realized that I'm one of few who have a good foreign network, international network, and I speak the language, you know. So if I do make it out alive, then maybe I should tell what I saw, and that kind of made it more, I get the why, so I can bear the how. So we had no idea what was happening. It was all rumors, and it was all someone who traveled around the city, because some people still had cars and they still had fuel, and they had reasons to go downtown to try to catch network. in that one specific spot by that bush, because that's where you can get the cell phone coverage. Some of them would call, especially closer to week 3, with one specific mobile service provider. They would call their friends and relatives elsewhere in Ukraine to try to get the scoop of what was happening, and they would come back and tell us. So I found out about the facts of like all the schools having been bombed, or the maternity hospital was bombed that I was born in, you know, and the drama theater was born. I found out from people who went downtown or talked to someone who has just come back from downtown, because we're essentially in the outskirts. So information had to travel through rumors or someone who was there.
Okay. Was there one thing that prompted you to make your escape, or was it multiple factors?
Well, the only thing holding me back was this guy not wanting to leave because it was his car, you know. So he was extremely patriarchal, you know, made up his mind and wouldn't change it, was posing himself as this like patriarchal figure of the family. And, you know, I tried to talk some sense into him, and I tried to tell him that, look, it looks like they're not just taking over and like putting their flag up. They are in to just wipe the city off the face of the earth, and the city means us as well. And you have a wife who has cancer and she's running out of pills, and maybe you should think of something else rather than your patriarchal I said so, you know. And I had a big argument with him the night before we escaped, which I don't think he remembers because he was tipsy, drunk. But the next morning he comes up to me and he says, you know, I made a decision. I think it's time for us to go. And I was like, really? Okay, let's do it. Let's pack. So if it was my choice, I would have left on day 1 or day 2. And then if that's not possible, you would have to wait out for at least 2 weeks because of the intense fighting. But then we got a rumor that you could still escape through already Russian controlled territories, but towards Ukraine, right? So no one, like, I would never go to Russia. I would rather stay in Mariupol, even as a refugee. But once we heard that we could make it to Zaporizhia, which is on the Dnieper River, central Ukraine, we knew it was very extremely dangerous. It was a lot of Russian checkpoints, and you know, anything can happen, and there's fighting going on in the areas that you're trying to drive through. But as soon as he said, let's do it, I'm ready, I said, you know, I'll be the second driver and let's go.
Okay. How many checkpoints did you have to go through?
We went through 18, so 2 Ukrainian, 1 in the beginning and 1 in the end, and 16 Russian, or so-called Donetsk People's Republic. So I saw all of those vehicles with Z, white Z on them. They were super condescending, very like, I don't even know how to describe. One of the guys asked me if I was a sniper because I had some calluses here from cooking on open fire. They asked me if I was transporting some Ukrainians in the back of the trunk. They didn't use the word Ukrainians, they used derogatory term, but that was the idea. And I was really paranoid about not switching to Ukrainian because that would be very dangerous. Because usually with checkpoints, you talk to officials, so you talk to Ukrainian. That's what we would always do.
Yeah.
And then I saw some Chechens, like Kadyrov Chechens, and some Buryats, you know, like Mongol looking, and just everything that has been reported in the media that we only heard rumors of, and then I saw it with my own eyes. And then the next day I found out that the place where we were waiting and congregating as a column to be taken into Zaporizhia, because it was after curfew, that was the place where the Russians shelled the column of people trying to escape just 2 days ago and killed something like 24 or something of them. I only found out later. So every new day that I'm living, like, I'm realizing more and more how much danger I was in. But at the moment, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like you're escaping to safety, you know?
At what point did you realize you had made it to safety?
When I saw the Ukrainian guys at the last checkpoint.
And what did that feel like?
I pulled up to the last checkpoint. So I wasn't driving all the way. I only drove out the first hour and a half, and then we left the car because it was low on fuel, and like stuffed 6 adults and 4 cats into the other car. I was sitting on someone's lap, and that's how we made the rest of the journey. So we pulled up to this yet another checkpoint, and the guy comes up to us and he says, "Hi, welcome." Something like, "Hi, how are you doing? Welcome," in Ukrainian. And that's when we were like, a woman next to me was crying, you know, she was praying to Virgin Mary, all like holding on to the image of Virgin Mary. And the guys around me, they could care less about women, by the way. They never once asked checked my passport or asked me any questions, except for this first guy with the sniper question. Had I known, I would have recorded everything, taken pictures of everything, but they only care about men. They're just so patriarchal. They care about men. They would strip them, check for like army belt, marks for tattoos that would say like "Glory to Ukraine" or anything Ukraine related, maybe a trident, which is the coat of arms of Ukraine. And look through Telegram, look through pictures, contacts, but only for men, you know. So had I known that I would be so invisible, I would have used it, but I didn't know. But when we pulled up, and on one hand, you're super exhausted and you just really don't care anymore, you know. On the other hand, it felt like we had made it. And then at the same time, you get cell phone service, you get mobile internet, and that's when I was able to post that I was alive. And I got this like flood of like hundreds of messages, and that's when I realized that people probably were wondering what was happening, and people probably knew something about the city.
So how did you, and you're in Denmark now, how did you end up from when you made it to safety to where you are now? What happened in between?
So we went, we spent only one night in Zaporizhia. A volunteer, a friend of an acquaintance of a friend whom I had never met, hosted us for free in his spare 1-bedroom. He said that his wife drove 5 kids to France the day the war began. He stayed behind. But when she found out about our situation, she said, "Look, tell them to have as long a shower as they want and do as much laundry as they want and just sleep, because I know how it feels. I need them to just chill." So we spent one night in Zaporizhia. We were planning for 2, but with the constant air raids, it was just too unsafe. And my friends who are in the military kept messaging me, "Get out of there. It's bound to become super dangerous. Get out now." So we only spent one night. And then we took an evacuation train, which was just, you don't have any tickets. You just stand in live line and you just get on and you go. And there's no services, there's no sheets, nothing like that, but it is an overnight train. We took it to Lviv in Western Ukraine, spent 2 nights there, again, hosted by a volunteer, a British guy who rented this huge ancient apartment in downtown Lviv and just bought like 16 mattresses and then put them on the floor and is hosting refugees for free on their way to the EU. And he reached out to me on Facebook. And then another volunteer whom I've never met drove us to the Polish border, because I just couldn't handle public transportation anymore, because we had 3 cats and everything we owned on our backs. It was just physically, I just couldn't do it anymore. So he drove us to the border. We crossed the border by foot in Medyka, Medyka. And by the way, you can reach out to me for any kind of like details or spelling and stuff like that. Medyka. It's a checkpoint into Poland.
Okay, thank you.
So we crossed by foot and then got into this refugee camp, and I thought, never, like, you know, like you watch news from I don't know, Aleppo or Afghanistan, but you never think you would end up in one. Never. But it wasn't a proper refugee camp as in like people live here. It was more like a walk you had to walk through on your way to the city, and tents set up on both sides of like animal rights organization that took us in right away, gave us 3 carriers, and then vaccinated and chipped all 3 cats for free, gave us documents, gave them food, water, put them in cages so they could sleep. I can even tell you what the name was. And the girl I ran into in that animal rights organization is Ukrainian, but will go to Lehigh in September, of all chances. IFAW. I don't know what it stands for. International Federation of Animal something workers.
I'll look it up.
IFAW. And then it was a lot of, like the new Chinese who are against the Communist Party and like some religious like Utah Mormons and something Israeli something, and the Red Crescent from Egypt, all like mixed together and working together, and like Polish Boy Scouts and someone else, and everybody was just mixed and working together. They had meals, they had like bio toilets. I grabbed a pair of socks that I really needed from like some religious organization. I think someone from donated a pair of socks from Target. So whoever did it, thank you. So we stayed there until the last journalist who was there to leave Mariupol picked us up. And then we drove Krakow for 1 night, Szczecin for 2 nights, and eventually made it to Copenhagen. So the reasoning behind that was Poland is overcrowded, they're stretched thin, they have been so wonderful, but they're just like about to explode, we didn't want to be in a place where we could make it further, but some people are too afraid, they don't speak the language, they don't have the friends who would drive them. So we thought we would make space for someone who really needed to be in Poland. And then Copenhagen was because I have friends here who could host me. And because I don't know what I'm doing next, but the embassies are right here. So if I decide to not stay here and go on, then it's easy to do. It's just a place to have a longer stay and just reassess what's next.
Okay. That was my next question, but I think you kind of answered it. What's next for you and your mom? But maybe it's too soon to ask you that.
You can ask, but I doubt I can answer. I mean, I would love to go back to Ukraine. I mean, when I had a chance to, I had a proper job in the US, I was legal. I still went back home because I wanted to be part of this revival of my city and country in general. It just held a lot of opportunities. It was the place to be, 3 years ago. So I went. So I would still like to go back to Ukraine, but at the moment, I think that that would present like extra difficulties for our army fighting for us, because since I'm not a sniper, right, I will be a burden because I'm a civilian, and they'll have to take care of us on top of taking care of the situation. So we're staying away for now, so they can do their job, and I'm doing what I can, which is right now telling about my story. But I don't know. I might ask for a temporary, legal stay, or whatever the name is, temporary residential something, either here or I have no idea. Maybe even the US or Canada. For now, we're not making any decisions. We kind of got here and we're trying to just recharge and sleep. We sleep 24/7,
And you said you still have family in Ukraine.
Yep. My father is missing. Last time I spoke to him was February 26th at night, around 5 p.m. He called me and we talked. Sorry. And we talked, and he has his own apartment on the other side of town. So I gave him. How do I mute WhatsApp call? Hold on.
It's okay.
Second.
Take your time.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, 1 second. Here we go. Okay. So his take was to laugh it off. He did not take it seriously. He was pretending like nothing was happening. He made jokes. I could not get through to him. He had just come back from traveling in Western Ukraine, was doing his laundry. And he said that, look, we have a really good basement. I will send you a picture of the inflatable mattress I put in there. And, I have good neighbors, so we'll stick together. But if something dangerous develops, then I'll make my way to you guys and then we can talk about leaving. And I said, if something dangerous develops, you will probably not be able to make your way to us. We should really be together. And he said, no, I'm not leaving my home for now. There's no reason to, which was true at the time. And now I know that if he is alive, then his part of town has been occupied, like in the second week. And I know that some of it is in ruins, but some stands, and I haven't heard from him. I have no idea what's going on with him. I really worry about the Red Cross taking people from the occupied territories to Russia by force and stripping them of their documents and giving them this piece of paper that says refugee in Russian, and that's it. But I'm hoping that even if that happened to him, he would find his way to just call me or text me or have someone call me and tell me what's going on with him. So I don't know what to think, to be honest. He's 66. I wouldn't say he's in best health. Haven't heard from him since February 26.
I'm sorry. What would you like people to know about the situation in Ukraine that they might not be aware of? You talk about the fatigue, and are there things you would like people to know about that they might not be aware of?
Well, what people are aware of really depends on how interested they are in the matter. So what I can tell you is that at first we thought that Russia brought in mobile crematoriums, and about 40,000 of those black, thick body bags with them. And then on February 20th, 4 days before the war started, they passed guidelines on emergency burials that eased the process and made it okay to not dig deep. And also made it okay to loot in the occupied territories. It's not a crime under Russian law anymore. It's not punishable. It's okay to do it. And then, they published this piece in the state media that has a huge audience 2 days ago that talks about basically a genocide of Ukrainians, that we have to be wiped. We are a natural construct, Nazi-ridden, Nazi-based. We cannot be cured. We have to be wiped off the face of the earth. And if someone considers themselves Ukrainian, that's essentially anti-Russian, and therefore there's no I'll send it to you if you want, and you can quote from there. So my worry is that we thought that they would bring in the crematoria and the black bags to cover the actual losses from their side, because Putin still needs to, keep up the narrative of how they're winning and so on. But after Bucha, I begin suspecting that's not the main point. If they're just trying to wipe Ukraine off the face of the earth, they've destroyed the most blossoming cities. So Bucha was on par with Mariupol. It was a suburb of Kiev for people who had money, like young families, IT professionals. That was you made it in life if you had a condo in Bucha. I don't even know what to compare it to. It's like in New Jersey, if it's greener area with a private pool type of thing.
Okay.
So instead of living in Manhattan in a 1-bedroom, you move out to New Jersey with a proper house and things like that. So I think we're against something much bigger than we thought. And it's very unfortunate that the burden of protecting Europe and potentially the world from the evil that Russia is at the moment is entirely on us.
Mhm.
You know, I feel like the West has made a huge mistake in 2014, not doing anything and basically appeasing Putin after he annexed Crimea and invaded Ukraine. And I think that now we have to deal with the consequences. And while Europe is debating gas, you know, mothers in Ukraine write details and like contacts uh, in like with ink, with pen on their children's backs, so that if parents are killed and the kid survives, then they can be located. And there's just disparity of understanding the realities and the dangers is staggering to me. Is the world just does not get the magnitude of what's going on. This is not a conflict, you know, and this is neither is it a war. It's kind of a genocide that's unfolding right in the middle of Europe, with everyone else just standing and watching, you know, and keeping Russia in the Human Rights Council.
What would you like the Western world's response to be? What would be the ideal response?
I don't like this question because I was asked the same in 2014 and then nothing was done.
Okay.
But I'll tell you that Russia understands only force. Well, the only language they understand. So in Irpin, civilians were armed, and in Bucha they were not, and you can tell what they did where. So, you know, if you're too, first of all, the West should not be afraid to start a third world war, you know, because Russia has already done it. So the question now is, how long are you gonna, what kind of magnitude are you going to let it get to before you get involved? There's no more like we pretend it's not happening, you know. So you can stop at annexation of part of Austria in what Hitler did in the 20th century, or you can wait until the entire world is involved. So the choice is yours, and I don't like the choice the West is making. But I would say complete embargo of oil products from Russia, cut them off of SWIFT completely, and not the way it was done now. Ban Russians from traveling outside of Russia. Every single Russian is responsible for what's going on right now. They financed this regime with their taxes. They made it happen. You know, the support for Putin is overwhelming. We see this every time he starts a war. First war, Chechen war, second Chechen war, Georgia, and now Ukraine. So every time Putin starts something like this, the support for him grows, and it's not fake statistics. It's true. That's what the Russians are. So a complete oil embargo, cut them off of SWIFT, kick them, just make them as close to North Korea in terms of business communications with the Western world as possible, because they should be treated like North Korea. They're dangerous. They are probably impossible to change. They should be isolated.
Okay. If our readers wanted to help refugees, is there anything that they could do?
Well, the problem with the US is that unlike Canada and other countries, it has completely not done anything for refugees from Ukraine. There is no process. There's no special status. You know, there's nothing done.
What is Canada done something different as far as asylum or?
Canada has a very direct process of what to do. They canceled visas. Even I could hop on a plane right now and be in Canada, you know, in 8 hours. I would be legal the moment I arrived. I could apply for residency, be able to work from day one, free healthcare, and so on. Now, free healthcare, I don't expect in the US, right? But the fact that nothing has been done, and it's basically the same thing. If you have family or are married to an American, then you can come. It's this. It's as if the war is not happening. It's the same thing. Nothing has been done for refugees. But so I know there are a lot of Americans who would like to help, but unfortunately, the most difficult thing is getting to the US. You know, but for those who made it, and I'm sure there are plenty who made it, someone who has relatives, you know, someone who is newlyweds, maybe with language difficulties or something like that. All of them will have PTSD. All of them will have left their entire lives behind. So I would suggest not only focusing on the essentials, because Americans are really good at it, like clothing and diapers and housing and stuff like that, but also on communication. Like maybe there's a way to socialize. Maybe there's a way to get people to drive, because that's very important in the US. Maybe teach them how to drive, get them through the process of getting a driver's license. So they maybe get them a $2,000 car to just get around, because that gives you a little bit of independence. And just we can, because of what we've been through, we can be irrational in a sense of like everyone processes trauma differently. Some of us can be judgmental, not open-minded, or make sweeping conclusions, or be aggressive, because when you're depressed, sometimes you're not apathetic, you're aggressive. Everything irritates you, or do weird things like sometimes even dangerous things like leave the water running or door open, and that's not on purpose. And just being patient and helping recover would be a great help.
Okay. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you want people to know?
Well, Americans should really find out as much as they can about Ukraine. There's plenty of information from trusted media. And then call their representatives. Because I don't feel that the US is doing enough. I really don't. Demand full embargo on oil products, cut Russia off of SWIFT completely, zero trade with Russia, and do something for Ukrainian refugees. Why was nothing done? It's been almost 2 months by now. Well, let me ask you, I have pictures from my time in the basement, if you would like to see them.
Yeah, is that something you could use with the article as well? Would that be okay?
Oh, yeah, it's everything from like kids in the basement. They couldn't go outside because of the heavy shelling, but they could draw with chalk on the walls of the basement. I don't know how to describe what we've been through, but basically the feeling is you don't know what tomorrow will bring. So you walk out in the morning and there's another like 9-story residential building right in front of you, and Grad missile went through it, took out a couple apartments. There was a huge fire. So every time you walk out, you realize you're on the outskirts, and this is not where the intense fighting is happening, but you can still see, we had to bury civilians. I could send you a picture just by the side of the road. Like imagine Bryant Park, like just randomly just by the entrance or by the side of the road, and like make makeshift wooden crosses with like permanent marker, right, who lies here, and dig. And it's very uncomfortable to dig because it's February, it's cold soil, it's very difficult. And then that turned out to be a spot for the best cell phone network. So you would stand on the fresh grave because that's where you could get to make a call, So I don't have pictures of the graves myself, but I have a picture of a guy from our basement who is holding a cross he just made to go bury a neighbor. And I have 2 pieces of missiles that I'm bringing to wherever I end up with me. If you'd like to see them, or maybe if you want a picture of them.
Sure.
My mom is pictured with the other chunk of it that got stuck in the ground right behind our house. Hold on 1 second. So this one is smaller. Americans keep telling me it's called shrapnel or shrapnel.
Shrapnel, yeah.
So this one, for some reason, did not burst into thousands of pieces. I don't know why. Every tiny piece here is supposed to fly off and kill whoever was outside, right? This one didn't burst. I don't know if it was defective or it didn't reach the temperature. I'm not sure why. But one of the mornings I walked out of the basement and I saw it like right in front of the stairs. So I picked it up. And then this one is a piece of Grad missile. It's a huge one. makes horrible damage, starts fire. I picked it up because it has some markings on it, so they can be traced back to the factory in Russia where this was made. So this was found behind our building, right where the outside wall of the basement would be. So
Wow.
like this. So when I send you a picture of my mom holding like a piece of something metal sticking out of the ground, this will be the top of it that flew off. And then that one is still stuck in the ground. It's impossible to get it out because it was so, the speed it flew into the ground made it go inside at least by 2/3. So it's impossible to dig it out right now.
Wow. Yeah, any pictures you want to send me that you wouldn't mind sharing? I want to show people what it was like for you to go along with your story. I know there's a lot of people here in Williamsport who remember you and are thinking of you and want to know how you're doing. Can you speak of any memories of your time in Williamsport?
Best memories ever. I mean, first of all, let's face it, I was like the most fortunate person in this world to end up with such a host family, because you can tell it's been what, 15 years. They treat me like a daughter, right? To them, I'm a daughter, just like their sons. So I was at Williamsport High. I took a bus from Curtin.
Yep.
Walked to take a bus, took a bus, went to school. I was in 11th grade. I was a junior, but I wanted to take AP Calc and they wouldn't let me. So they had to make me a senior so I could take AP Calc. So I actually graduated at 16. I was in a cheerleading squad because I thought there was nothing else that was more American than that and I should try. I was a flyer. And I volunteered for Habitat for Humanity. I did an after-school program for kids in need at Trinity Episcopal. I took French, and like taking a foreign language in English, that's that's difficult. And what else? I had like my calc teacher reach out to me and my biology teacher reach out to me. We would bike along the Susquehanna, we would hike Ricketts Glen. I just a typical, very active, like a local for a year type of thing.
Okay, that's nice. We still have those memories. Is there anything else you want to share that I didn't ask you about?
I don't think so. It depends on the angle you're trying to kind of outline. Is it more like personal feelings or is it more like facts? Or especially
I think a mixture of both. I think a first person account, and I feel like the readers know you from the first story, from your host family telling us all about you, and this is what you've been through and where are you now and how are you doing. But obviously facts mixed into with the story.
Well, let me tell you about the destruction a little bit more. We had a friend from the basement, a neighbor in the basement, who wanted to bring some hot food to his relatives, his mother, his sister, his nephew and niece, stuck on the other side of town. And he knew that they didn't have a chance to cook an open fire, so they were just eating all the dry foods they had, whereas we had open fire. And they couldn't because it was constantly being shelled, but we were not. So he wanted to go. Instead, he brought them over, and just the look in his eyes, he was like, I feel like I pulled them away from out of death, because a missile hit. They were on the first floor, and there's this false feeling of safety on the first floor in situations like this. So the missile, like this one, went in between the first and second floor, killing the neighbors upstairs. And that's when he pulled up, and he's like, I can't realize that I made it out alive. I pulled them out like this, just stashed them in my car and just brought them over. So there was a situation like that. There was a neighbor who went to visit his daughter just like 1 minute drive from us, living in this 9-story building. I will send you a picture of it. And the building was shelled. He parked his car in front of the entrance to her apartment, walked into her apartment, and the building got shelled. So her windows were going on the other side, so they were not hurt, but he came out, and all of the glass in his car, except for the front shield, was gone, and the tires were punctured, and the car was misshapen, and lots of like remnants of bullets on both sides, but the mechanism itself was still functioning. So he just started it up and drove it back, parked it in front of our basement, covered it with cardboard because it was scary to look at, and that's it. And it just sat there standing. And then what else? So the guy who was hosting us, my friend, his nephew is in the National Guard in the steel factory Azovstal. And the Russians would just use fighter jets on the city. They threw bombs, so maternity ward, the drama theater, they were aiming for one school, but hit a 9-story residential building next to it instead. They were aiming for the only underground crossroads that we had, because a lot of people were sheltering there. All that was air raids, because you cannot do such damage with just a Grad missile like this. So his nephew was stuck in the factory, and we would just like, we would see the fighter jets going above our heads and then going there and dropping a bomb there. You cannot really see them, and the voice, the sound travels, it lags by several seconds, but you can see the explosions, and you can see this like pink, hellish, like pink horizon, like right there, and he would just stare at it and think like, how likely is it that he's still alive, you know? And so a lot of, you know, people don't think about what goes with a situation like that. A lot of people had chronic illnesses. They could not get help. Mm-hmm. So people don't just die of like combat, you know, they would just not get help and they would die. And one neighbor died because he couldn't get help. And then I had 2 neighbors who had chronic pain, mm-hmm. one in the knee, one in the back. I left all the ibuprofen I had behind with them, but I mean, it's gone now. I mean, they've gone through it by now. So I only can think of, how do you survive a war in chronic pain, you know? Mm-hmm. And then so many stray animals just abandoned, some of them not even let go, still on the collar, on the chain in like backyards, just like thousands of animals just shell-shocked, you know, and running. And there was a dog who decided that our basement was her home. So every time a fighter jet would circle above us and then drop a bomb, he would bark at them, protecting us, right? And just the suffering is indescribable. And the more vulnerable you are, if you are an elderly, a child, you know, with chronic illnesses, if you don't have a vehicle, if you don't have a large family, if you're by yourself, if you're an animal, animals were especially vulnerable. You get hit first. So just the suffering I witnessed is just, those animals are still there. I mean, no one thinks, I escaped with the 3 cats, you know, and even then I had people telling me how stupid I am and I should just abandon them and think about real lives of real humans, you know. But I also know some people who did the best they could to rescue as many as they could. So it just, the war shows true colors of people, and sometimes they're not the best. But then if you recount my journey of just wonderful people helping along the way, having never met me essentially, you know, then you also know there's another side of the story to humanity.